everyone, and welcome to another episode of Queen's Court. I have the privilege of having Dr. Roberto Montoya, who's the Associate Vice President of Partner Success at InsideTrack, specifically focused on Hispanic serving institutions. I have an extensively amazing resume, and I say that truly, like it's a very inspiring.
It's an honor to be here amongst royalty in the
We'll
court.
take it. I would love to talk a little bit about how your background really helped your journey into the work that you're doing today.
I grew up amongst some of the illest bachucos and gangsters that you can imagine, and also some of the most prolific, pedantic academics, because I was raised by my single mother who was undereducated and underemployed her entire life. So we grew up in concentrated poverty and we struggled. But interestingly, one of my aunts was a law professor at the University of New Mexico. So I could walk from the barrio where I grew up in the North Valley, about a mile to my aunt's house in one of the most affluent neighborhoods, because Albuquerque, like many cities, is very segregated, and be surrounded by books. My tia and my tío really teaching me how to think critically. I bring all that with me to my work, to my research, to what Gloria Anzaldúa would call a nepantla, the border. So I'm in between these two worlds, and I'm so blessed and thankful to have that as part of my way of knowing the world.
Your work at InsideTrack is really now bridging those two worlds with students, but also grounding it within your own identity and what you're bringing to those Hispanic serving institutions.
I was honored to serve as the first ever Chief Educational Equity Officer for the Colorado Department of Higher Ed in the state of Colorado. In that role, I got to work with all of our public institutions and the private institutions in some way with the very small task of erasing equity gaps in the state of Colorado that have persisted for centuries. We love talking about equity. It's very hard to do equity work. How do you begin to operationalize it into policies, practices, and procedures? And during that work, I had the opportunity to meet with some folks from InsideTrack. They had been doing coaching as a form of building like social mobility and building agency and really trying to empower and provide the necessary wraparound resources for learners. Then we had a conversation, it's like one of the fastest growing segments are Hispanic serving institutions, HSIs, and we need someone to help lead that work. And it felt like a really wonderful extension of the work that I was doing in Colorado to expand that across the country.
And what people might have a misconception about when it comes to Hispanic serving institutions versus HBCUs, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of misconceptions about it.
They're different. Now what's interesting is HSIs are only 19% of colleges and universities, but they enroll 62% of Latina undergraduate students. So 19, but 62%. HSIs have tripled in the last 28 years when the designation started in like 1995. And that does not even include the nearly 400 emerging HSIs. What really complicates HSIs, when you become a Hispanic serving institution, when you're federally recognized, you have access to federal grant dollars. A lot of institutions need that money in order to kind of invest and provide resources. And that pot hasn't grown. So you have this swell of Hispanic serving institutions all going over the same small pot of federal grant dollars. So it's very competitive. We have a ton of Hispanic enrolling institutions. We don't have a lot of Hispanic serving or thriving institutions. And that's part of the work that we're here to do.
From surviving to thriving, how are these institutions actually serving students?
There are tons of institutions who are doing really great work. And a lot of this work is happening at the community college system.
Yes.
They are doing a lot of really wonderful serving this work. What does it mean to have environment where a sense of belonging is potent, where the culture on your campus actually represents the students that you have on your brochures? And so we have to really think through and work through very coordinated coalition building. And Hispanic students are not a monolith.
Yes.
And so how do we do that work to meet the very differentiated needs of a student population at an institution that then has to be very responsive and not prescriptive to those students?
And you talked about comunidad and cultura.
Cultura, yeah.
What does accountability look like when we're talking about institutions that are enrolling a large number of these students, but are we holding them accountable to doing right by these students?
You know, that's really wonderful. Thank you for naming that. And the fact that we don't see professors of color often at some of these institutions that have these designations means that we don't often see ourselves in the curriculum, in front of the classrooms, in deanships. We need to change that. You cannot bring them in at a discount because what they bring is invaluable. You know, because a lot of our HSIs are situated at primarily white institutions. That means like you can have a HSI designation, so you have 25% of your student population identifies as Hispanic or Latine. More than 50% of your other students identify as white, which then means that you can be at an institution that is overwhelmingly white, but they have a designation. So you have to, how do you balance that?
And, I am shocked.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
That is quite common.
My mind is blown right now.
I would also say that we need to think about providing supports for students well beyond the classroom. A good way, coaching. We need to be thinking about basic needs. Again, you have to really be intentional in terms of providing that support. If you can do these things and if you can commit to these things, then I assure you that you're going to begin to change the conditions in which your learners are experiencing that institution or that organization.
Thank you for leading that action at InsideTrack. Thank you for leading that action in your daily life, and it's very evident that you are an inspiration to many. So thank you for being on Queen's Court.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you'll be back.
Yes.
That was good.
Oh,
hey,
that was dope. That was dope.
You felt good?
I felt great, yeah.